Welcome to Coffee and Conversation. My name is Honorine, and today I'm with Alexa Guerrera, who is pursuing a PhD in Ecology and Evolution. Alexa, welcome to Coffee and Conversation, and thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Coffee and Conversation. My name is Honorine, and today I'm with Alexa Guerrera, who is pursuing a PhD in Ecology and Evolution. Alexa, welcome, and thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with a little introduction.
So obviously my name's Alexa. I am from Connecticut originally. I went to a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts called Stonehill College. It's a primarily undergraduate institution. When I was there, there were no graduate students. Now they have a small master's program. And I got my degree in biology. While I was there, my second year, I started undergraduate research. I worked under Dr. Bronwyn Bleakley, who is an evolutionary biologist, particularly studies social behaviors in Trinidadian guppies. And so I did an honors thesis under Dr. Bleakley and decided my senior year of undergrad that I was really interested in pursuing a career in evolutionary biology and continuing with my love for animal behavior. So I asked her just simply, do you know people who might be interested in having me as a graduate student that have similar interests to me? I wasn't completely opposed to working with other systems other than guppies, but I did end up here at FSU with Dr. Kimberly Hughes, who studies evolution using guppies as her main study system.
For people who don't know, because I didn't know before, guppies are very beautiful tropical fish, and they're very cute. In very simple term, what I understood is that you study the dating life of guppies, right?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So specifically, I do study the dating life of guppies, but we use the guppies as a model system to understand what maintains genetic variation. So there are lots of examples of genetic variation in the wild. Particularly in the guppies, males have really colorful patterns, and they live in river systems in Trinidad. And within a river, there's a high amount of variation in their color patterns, and as well as across different populations, so different rivers. So we are using them to understand what forces allow variation to persist, because you would think that selection would select for more uniform traits that give rise to success and survival. But that's not the case. We see a lot of variation in almost every system. So they kind of give us a really good, they're like our lab rat, a really good way to try and understand what could be maintaining this variation. And from evidence that Dr. Hughes has gathered, we know one of the main things is a behavioral mechanism where females seem to prefer males with color patterns they've never seen before. So the rare, shinier males they're attracted to, and that kind of allows that variation to persist. And then where my dissertation work comes in is that I'm interested in how the males are interacting with one another to potentially also promote this color pattern variation that we see. And using them as a model system, it allows us to ask on a smaller scale what could maintain biodiversity and how could we use that to inform certain conservation methods where we want to uphold that genetic diversity.
So are those guppies in like in the wild water, or are they in an aquarium in the lab?
So here at FSU, we have a lab. So in the King Life Sciences building on the first floor, there's a room called the vivarium. And essentially it's this big hall of different animal research labs. And so our fish are in tanks in rooms in that space. But they are originally derived from the wild. They've just been lab bred for a while.
You look at their behaviors. So how does it work? Like, do you spend hours looking at them in the aquarium, or are they connected to cables somehow?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are lots of different ways that we study their behavior. One of the main things that I do is I raise and breed males and females, and then I'll just put them in an aquarium to freely interact with one another. And I'm measuring their behaviors with just like a computer software. This male did this female did that. And I do that. Each trial that I run is about 30 minutes, and I'll run a few trials a day. So it is kind of like hours of watching them swim around.
And then what do you do with all this data? Because I feel like you could spend your whole life looking at them and having like an amount of incredible data. At what point do you stop yourself?
Yeah, that's also a good question, because you do get a lot of data when you study animal behavior. So you kind of have to choose based on your hypothesis, what things you're interested in really asking about them. So one of the things I'm interested in is whether or not the male's phenotype or his particular color pattern determines how he competes with other males. So what I'll do is I'll measure his competitive behaviors as well as his color pattern and see how successful is that male based on his color pattern. So I can run a bunch of statistics on that data. I'm still in the middle of that experiment. It's a pretty big one. So at some point when I've reached the sample size that I want, that I think will give me accurate results, that's kind of when I'll start to analyze all of that.
So when did you start that experiment, and when do you expect finishing that experiment?
Well, I started it right before COVID, and then COVID hit, and I had to stop. My undergrad graduated, who was helping me. And you have to be really particular when you're doing behavioral work that you're as consistent as possible, because you can have a lot of bias in who's observing the behaviors. So what I decided to do was use that as just kind of a preliminary experiment to help me figure out, what exactly behaviors I felt were most important. And then I restarted the experiment last fall. And so I've been running it for about a year now.
Every day?
I do it every other day because I have a bit of an acclimation period. I set up my fish the day before in a particular social environment, and then I'll run my trials on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay, so you don't go to the lab on the weekend?
I don't go on to the lab on the weekend to run my behavioral trials, but working with animals, there's a lot of what we call animal husbandry, which is essentially just taking care of the animals. So making sure they're fed, the tank systems that we have them in are functioning properly. So I'm kind of the main lab manager of that space right now. So I occasionally will have to go in on the weekends, but not to do the actual experiment, if that makes sense.
So does it mean it's been a year that you've not left Tallahassee?
I have, luckily, with the way my experiment is set up, I can pause for like a week. And so I have gone home. I went home at the beginning of June for my brother's wedding for a few days. I'm able to go home around the holidays. So luckily it is a lot of staying here, but I can get away.
So who feeds your guppies when you're away?
I have a lot of undergraduates who work for me. So obviously the fish need to be cared for every single day. So I'll have students work under me either through something called a DIS, which is a directed independent study. So they'll get research credit hours, or there are other programs like Whimsy and things like that. So it's mostly the undergraduates who are helping me. In rare cases, other graduate students in my program who also study fish will cover for each other sometimes if we have to. But the undergrads play a really important role in my research.
I've also read that you are passionate about mentoring undergrad. Let's talk more about this.
So the reason I wanted to go to graduate school was obviously because I love biology and I love animal behavior. But working under my undergraduate research advisor, I realized how important her mentorship was in my life. And she was very inspiring to work with. She was very dedicated to diversity and inclusion. And so I kind of do this thing where I pick someone that I really look up to, and then I decide that that's kind of how I want my life to go as well. And so I saw the way that she interacted with all of her students, and it really inspired me to do that as well. So as soon as I got here, I got really involved with working with the undergrads, and, helping them determine, what they want to do with their lives, with their biology degree. Because I found as an undergrad, it was really hard to kind of determine what you wanted to do until you saw someone who was maybe doing what you might be interested in. So yeah, I have a lot of passion towards working with the undergrads and getting them excited about the science, probably selfishly because that's what I had done. There are a lot of students who they know what they want to do, they're pre-med, they want to come in and get their research credit, and I am totally for them, doing that. They want to be vets, so they need some animal experience. And then there are students who they'll see the guppies, see their behaviors, and decide, oh, this is a really cool, ecology and evolution is really interesting and cool. And they'll also be simultaneously taking the courses like ecology and evolution. And those students, I'll help, work through ideas with them on things that they might want to pursue. So I had a student who was helping me, sorry, my cat's tail. He hears me talking and has to come. I had a student who was helping me analyze photos of guppies. And so she gained the computer experience on how to do that. And then she actually applied to a master's program at, I believe it was University of Michigan, doing similar things in another study system. And so I knew right away that they were really interested in ecology and evolution. And so I kind of helped them navigate how to apply to graduate school, who to talk to, what kind of emails to send. So that was a really good experience for me as well. Kind of the first time I was able to play that mentorship role.
You're also passionate about mental health advocacy. In what ways?
I'm someone who has always kind of on and off struggled with anxiety, depression, particularly when I was an undergrad. And then when I came to graduate school, I came straight from undergrad. So I didn't really give myself a break. And I knew that I had to be compassionate towards myself during that, because I didn't get that break, and I knew that I could burn out really easily. So luckily, I was put into a department that kind of had already established a good sense of conversation around mental health. So I got involved in the Ecology and Evolution graduate students, which is a subsection of the biology department. Every year puts on what we call just a mental health talk. So all of the graduate students get together. A few of the senior graduate students will lead the conversation, talk to everyone about what are the signs and symptoms that you might be experiencing burnout, what resources can you access, and just kind of acknowledging that we all are more likely to struggle with mental health issues in graduate school. So I think I put on my own talk for the first time, my second year in the program. I'm about to start my fifth year. And then from there, we had some people from the Appalachia Center in Tallahassee come and give a training, and I got mental health first aid certified. And then I was asked to put on a talk for new student orientation at the beginning of each fall. And so I'm just really passionate and love talking about mental health again, selfishly because I struggle with it a bit. And so I've had really great opportunities to talk to my own peers and even faculty about it to try and, make them aware of what some of our current day struggles really are when it comes to that.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoy talking about the guppies and learning more about your passions.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really nice to meet you.